Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm going back on my word a little here, and I will be continuing Iceberg content. As such, I'm banking the Thule Society deep dive for the moment. With that out of the way, let's take a look at today's Iceberg. This mental illnesses chart was provided by Reddit user Emmeline, who allowed me to make a video about it. I will post a link to their Reddit page below, and a big thanks to them for allowing me to make this video. I am not a psychologist, and all the information I used in this video was taken from online sources, but it should line up correctly. This chart has 5 levels, with most of the beginning of the chart being definitions, with us jumping into more interesting diagnoses later. I'll be going into more depth with topics that allow for it. Music choice will be more lighthearted, as I do not wish to stigmatize anyone with these disorders. Alongside this, there won't be many visuals in this video, as it's difficult for me to find images for most of these mental problems, so feel free to start up a game or work on something in the background. With all that being said, let's jump into the first level. Level 1. DSM-5. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses is the latest reference book on mental health and brain-related conditions and disorders. It is used by the American Psychiatric Association to attempt to accurately diagnose any condition by providing detailed definitions. Social and communication challenges. This could be in reference to the baseline challenges that come up for certain people affected by various disorders. This is characterized by difficulties with verbal and nonverbal language, and often occurs with those other conditions such as autism, ADHD, trouble reading, or language disorders. Mood swings. While mood swings are not an immediate cause for alarm, frequent, excessive, or all-consuming mood swings may be cause for concern. Some more common diagnoses for mood swings are ADHD and bipolar, where the associated mood swings often come with other effects, such as energy and fatigue in ADHD or mania and irritability in bipolar. Avoidance. Avoidant behavior refers to any behavior people exhibit to escape or distract themselves from any difficult thoughts, feelings, or situations. 5 types of avoidant behaviors are common, and I'll go through a list in examples. Situational avoidance is the most common, and refers to staying away from people, places, or things that activate this behavior, like crowded places and eye contact. Cognitive avoidance is actively stopping yourself from confronting distressing thoughts or memories, and is usually marked by distracting yourself, disassociating, or fantasizing. Protective avoidance is exhibited by behaviors that make you feel safer in your physical environment, such as performing small daily rituals or keeping lucky charms. Somatic avoidance is steering away from situations that elevate heart rate, as the feeling could be similar to an anxiety or stress response. This type often avoid roller coasters, working out, or other exciting events. And finally, substitution avoidance relies on replacing feelings with something else, often sadness for excitement or anger. This commonly is used by those with substance abuse disorders or other addictions to cover painful feelings. Inattention. Inattention involves difficulty focusing, getting distracted easily, and forgetfulness. These traits could be a sign of ADHD or avoidant behavior. However, this could also be a symptom of other normal things, as well, lack of sleep. Human emotion. Humans generally have 6 different emotions that then break down into more specific emotions: love, fear, anger, sadness, surprise, and joy. Specific phobias. This entry is just an amalgamation of different phobias without naming each individual one, as fear responses ranges by individual. Some common examples are thalassophobia, or fear of deep water, acrophobia, fear of heights, and arachnophobia, or fear of spiders. Panic disorder. Those with panic disorder have frequent and unexpected panic attacks. Panic attacks are characterized as a brief episode of intense anxiety, similar to being overcome with fear. Panic disorder itself can cause these panic attacks at any time, often for no apparent reason. Social experiments. Social experiments are a form of research that observes people's reactions to situations or events. The ethics of this type of research is dubious, as many experiments were taken without the consent or knowledge of those participating. Many well-known experiments exist, with the most well-known being the Stanford Prison Experiment, a study on the psychological effects of being a prisoner or a guard. Another popular experiment was done towards bystander apathy, which tried to replicate a murder case in which 38 witnesses saw but did not aid the victim. There's a lot to discuss in this topic alone, and I may make a video about the more interesting experiments at a later date. Social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder is a rather common condition that involves intense fear or anxiety of being judged negatively or of being watched by others. People with this disorder may experience this anxiety or fear in any situation in which they believe that they can be scrutinized or judged, such as public speaking, job interviews, dating, or even talking to a cashier. Sensory processing disorder. Sensory processing disorder is a condition that affects your body's ability to process messages from your senses, which causes very low or very high stimuli response. Normally, this is an indicator of autism, and while it is not recognized as a formal diagnosis on its own, it may exist separate from autism. Some symptoms include overreacting or underreacting to sounds or textures, impaired coordination during an event, and a feeling of being overly sensitive. These symptoms are most likely to happen at crowded bars, concerts, grocery shopping, or any place with numerous different sounds coming from different locations. Stigma of illness. This term is used to bring attention to the fact that people with disorders are often defined by their illness, rather than someone with an illness. For example, those experiencing PTSD, otherwise known as shell shock in World War II, were called cowards and mocked for their illness. Another example is someone with high social anxiety, who may be mocked for being shy. There exist many stereotypes of many disorders and illnesses, and this stigma often leads people to hide their illnesses from others as a way to protect themselves from being labeled. Agoraphobia. Those with agoraphobia have a fear of leaving environments they consider to be safe, and avoid situations and places that might cause them to panic or feel trapped and helpless. Some locations they avoid may be crowds, standing in line, or public transportation. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. OCD is a disorder in which a person experiences recurrent thoughts and engages in repetitive behaviors. While cleaning, arranging, and perfectionism is often the theme, other forms of OCD exist. There are many types, as follows. Contamination focuses on keeping clean out of the fear of germs, dirt, and disease. Perfectionism is being overly concerned with the exactness and symmetry of your surroundings and thoughts. Checking is a compulsion to repeatedly check on things like keys, wallets, or a locked door for fear of negative consequences. Harm OCD involves intrusive violent thoughts, impulses, and urges to cause harm. Superstitious focuses on the believed power of certain lucky actions, rituals, thoughts, and words to better or worsen a desired outcome. Arithmomania is an urge to engage in repetitive counting behaviors. Religious focuses on the fear of sin, blasphemy, or breaking moral codes. Orientation worries about their sexual orientation and seeks assurance for it. And relationship OCD is intrusive thoughts about a person's own relationship and their partner's qualities and flaws. I've combined a few together, but I think I hit them all. International Classification of Diseases. The ICD is a globally used medical classification for use in health management. It is maintained by the World Health Organization, which directs and coordinates with the United Nations. Generalized Anxiety Disorder. GAD is similar to panic disorder and OCD, in which a person will be affected by constant worries, restlessness, and trouble concentrating. Some symptoms include constantly repeating thoughts, excessive worry, difficulty falling asleep, and hypervigilance. Autophagia. Autophagia is the practice of consuming or biting one's own body. It most commonly manifests as nail biting and hair pulling. However, more serious forms include biting the skin from your fingers or cheek. Level 2. Savant Syndrome. Savant syndrome is a condition in which an individual with various disorders or an injury has some sort of amazing ability or talent. Around half of the cases are associated with autism, however, brain injuries have also been known to cause it. It is not recognized as a mental disorder within the DSM-5, as it has more to do with brain healing or structure. Many different types of savants exist, with the more major areas pertaining to art, memory, arithmetic, musical abilities, or spatial skills. Two examples are the ability to calculate the day of the week for any given date, or the ability to recall personal memories with clarity. Doesn't meet diagnosis criteria. Getting the right diagnosis is important, but sometimes not everything lines up, and cases of uncategorized illness may come about. The two most common forms of this are provisional and differential. A provisional diagnosis means the doctor is not 100% sure they have labeled it correctly and need more information on what is going on. A differential diagnosis means there are more than one possible answer, and they need to work on it to narrow it down. There is the third option of not meeting the criteria for anything, but that is a rather rare case. Phantom vibration syndrome. PVS is the false belief that your phone or other mobile devices are vibrating when they are not. Most often associated with excessive phone use, it has been described as a tactile hallucination. Phantom ringing syndrome also exists, with the mind thinking a phone is ringing instead. Stendhal syndrome. Stendhal or Florence syndrome is a condition that allegedly occurs to certain individuals when they are exposed to objects, artwork, or phenomena of great beauty. These symptoms include rapid heartbeat, fainting, confusion, or even hallucination when exposed. Cyclothymic disorder. Cyclothymic disorder is essentially a lesser form of bipolar, which causes you to have emotional ups and downs, although less extreme than bipolar. The high portion is known as hypomania, and while going through it, you may experience hyperactivity, feel more talkative, and engage in riskier behavior, while the low is just depression, with mood swings, low self-esteem, and possible insomnia. Dysmorphia. Body dysmorphia is an illness involving intense and obsessive focus on a perceived flaw in your own appearance. There are many possibilities for the body part in general, such as nose, ears, hair, or any other body part, and the person affected may spend hours a day trying to fix it with cosmetic procedures or exercise. One form of weight dysmorphia is anorexia, in which a person will fast or obsess about exercise to maintain a certain weight. Jumping Frenchman of Man. This is a rare disorder, characterized by an individual with an extreme startle reaction. While being startled when exposed to an unknown event is normal, the historical patients with this disease were known to react by jumping, yelling, and hitting others at any sudden stimuli. Major depressive disorder. Otherwise known as clinical depression, major depression is a disorder characterized by persistent depressed mood or loss of interest in any activities, which causes a significant impairment in your daily life. Many different causes exist, from biological, psychological, or social sources. One interesting thing of note is that research has been done into depression, and it was found to cause changes in brain function, including altered activity in certain locations of the brain. Post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is a disorder that develops when a person has experienced or witnessed something shocking, terrifying, or has been in a dangerous event. While often used to describe war veterans, war is not the only cause of PTSD, and PTSD can develop in situations as simple as a car accident. PTSD triggers are what bring about memories of the trauma, which places the person within a heightened state with panic attacks or even hallucinations being possible. Nightmares are another symptom. Hoarding. Hoarding disorder is an ongoing difficulty of throwing away or parting with possessions because you believe you need to save them for later, and any attempt to throw items out is met with distress. There's a television series called Hoarders which shows people with this disorder. Hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is a primary symptom of PTSD, in which a person becomes placed into a high alert mindset and locked into a fight or flight response. This can lead to violent outbursts, sleeping problems, constant anxiety, and irritability. Flashbacks. Flashbacks are another symptom of PTSD, where a memory of past trauma reemerges and it feels as if you are reliving the experience. It does not need to be in the form of seeing images, and can also be a feeling that washes over you. This association is common during a flashback. Intermittent explosive disorder. IED is an impulse control disorder that is characterized by sudden episodes of unwarranted anger and involves sudden hostility, impulsivity, and aggressive outbursts. Road rage is a common form of this disorder, but is not always related. Orthorexia. Orthorexia is an unhealthy focus on eating quality foods. Described as a fixation on righteous eating, those with this disorder are obsessed with their meals being clean or nutritious, and will avoid any meals that do not meet their standard or that they do not make themselves. Autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. Autism itself is a very broad term for many different subtypes, and as such, there's no one-size-fits-all description. The general blanket symptoms are difficulty communicating, socializing, obsessive interest, and repetitive behaviors. From there, there's a breakdown between high-functioning and low-functioning individuals. High-functioning autism is used to describe an individual with an average to above-average intelligence and language skills. These individuals may have trouble in social situations, but are overall able to function independently or even excel in certain situations. Low-functioning autism represents individuals with significant intellectual and developmental disabilities, whom need assistance with daily living situations. There are 5 types of autism. Asperger's, or Level 1 spectrum disorder, have above-average intelligence and strong verbal skills, but experience social communication challenges. Rett syndrome mostly affects girls and involves a loss of movement and coordination, challenges with speech, and sometimes difficulty breathing. Childhood disintegrative disorder, which causes a child to experience sudden regression between the ages of 3 and up to 10, losing previous language, toileting, or motor skills. Kanner syndrome, which is described as classic autistic disorder, involves lack of emotional attachment, uncontrolled speech, obsession with handling objects, and communication challenges with a high degree of rote memory learning. And finally, pervasive developmental disorder, which is a mild type of autism that involves delayed language development, walking, and other motor skills. Pica. Pica is a mental health condition where a person compulsively swallows and craves non-food items, and is especially common in children with certain conditions. While oftentimes harmless, swallowing of certain items can make this very hazardous. Binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder is a serious eating disorder in which you frequently consume large amounts of food, feeling unable to stop eating. Overeating on some occasion is normal, but for binge eaters, it is a regular occurrence where they lose control. Obsession. In psychology, an obsession is a repeated thought, urge, or mental images that are intrusive, unwanted, and make a person anxious. Common obsessions are contamination, fear of misplacing something, or fear of losing control over one's behavior. Mania. Mania, or manic behavior, is a period of 1 week or more in which a person experiences a change in their normal behavior that drastically affects their functioning. Hypomania is the same, but lasts less time and does not cause a deficit in social or occupational functions. The characteristics of mania are increased talkativeness, decreased need for sleep, racing thoughts, distractibility, and an elevated mood or grandiosity. Antisocial personality disorder. ASPD is a dysfunctional thought process that shows no regard for right and wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others. Those with ASPD tend to make others angry, upset, or manipulate others with indifference, and lack remorse for their behavior. Adjustment disorders. An adjustment disorder is an excessive reaction to a stressful event or change that involves negative thoughts, strong emotions, and changes in behavior. The reaction is considered an excessive and unhealthy response to anything from a parent's divorce, loss of a pet, or birth of a sibling. While adults can experience this, it's predominantly diagnosed in children and adolescents. Erotomania. Erotomania is the belief that someone is in love with you, but they are not. This can happen with someone you've never met, and could be a famous person, like a politician or an actor. You may also believe yourself to be in a relationship with this person, or that the person, if famous, may hide words or phrases in their speech or songs for you. Excoriation disorder. Excoriation, or chronic skin picking, is a disorder similar to obsessive-compulsive disorder, in which one repeatedly picks at one's own skin, resulting in swollen or broken skin. Individuals may pick at healthy skin, minor irregularities like pimples or calluses, open wounds, dry skin, or other skin lesions. Impulsive behavior. Impulsive behavior is one's tendency to act without thinking, such as blurting something out, buying something you had not planned to, or running across the street without looking. While someone may perform impulsive behavior, it's not noteworthy unless it is frequent and causes trouble. Lycanthropy. Clinical lycanthropy is a rare syndrome, described since antiquity, where a patient has the delusional belief of transforming or having transformed into a wolf, where zoanthropy is the overarching term used to describe anyone who has the delusional belief of turning into an animal. Hyperactivity and impulsivity. Hyperactivity means that a person may seem to move about constantly, or excessively fidget, tap, or talk, even in situations deemed inappropriate. In adults, hyperactivity may mean extreme restlessness or talking too much. Impulsivity was talked about earlier, but when both are present, it could be a sign of ADHD, which we will talk about shortly. Trichotillomania. Trichotillomania, otherwise known as hair pulling disorder, involves recurrent, irresistible urges to pull out hair from your scalp, eyebrows, or other areas of your body, despite trying to stop. Foreign accent syndrome. Foreign accent syndrome is a speech disorder that causes a person to speak in a perceived foreign accent. This is most often caused by damage to the brain, including a stroke or brain injury. Dysthymia. Dysthymia is a mild, long-lasting form of depression, sometimes known as persistent depressive disorder. People who have this form may also experience bouts of major depression at times. Trauma bonding. A trauma bond is an attachment that develops from experiencing physical or emotional trauma, followed by positive reinforcement. The most common place these develop are romantic relationships, but they may also exist within friendships as well. Trauma bonding generally happens through stages, which we will go over. Love bombing is an attempt to get close to an individual through high praise and excessive flattery for manipulative purposes. The abuser may then intentionally toe the line and test the victim's trust and dependency on them. After they have your trust, they may start to critique your qualities as insignificant or problematic. Gaslighting and manipulation follows, in which the abuser will try to make the victim question their reality or perception of any event. Finally, the victim in question will eventually give up and start fawning, an adaptive response where they placate and appease their abuser in an attempt to reduce volatility and abusiveness towards themselves. Dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is a neurological disorder characterized by writing disabilities that cause the person's writing to be distorted and incorrect. Common markers of this within the writing are no concept of spacing, inconsistent capital letters, trouble writing in a line, erasure puts holes in paper, or people who find writing painful. Truman Show delusion. Someone with Truman Show delusion believes that their life is a staged reality show, or that they are being watched constantly on hidden cameras. ADHD. Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder is one of the most common developmental disorders of childhood, and can last into adulthood. Those with ADHD have trouble paying attention, controlling impulsive behaviors, or being overly active. Those with ADHD often daydream, fidget, are talkative, and take unnecessary risks. Substance abuse disorder. Those with substance abuse disorder will continually use certain medications or drugs despite harmful consequences. People with this disorder have an intense focus on using certain substances, such as alcohol, tobacco, or other illicit drugs, to the point that their day-to-day life becomes impaired. Orthosomnia. Orthosomnia is a condition similar to OCD, or orthorexia, in which a person obsessively attempts to improve or perfect their sleep. Believed to be driven by fitness trackers, some who attempt to improve their sleep become consumed in their approach, and often suffer as their obsession causes them to lose sleep instead. Diogenes syndrome. Diogenes syndrome is a disorder that involves hoarding trash and severe self-neglect. It is characterized by squalor, social alienation, and refusal of help, and is often brought on by stress. Level 3. Dissociation. When someone dissociates, they feel disconnected from themselves and the world around them, sometimes feeling detached from their body, or as if the world around them is not real. During this time, it may be hard to communicate with others. Sleep disorders. Several sleep disorders exist, with sleep apnea and insomnia being the most common. All of these negatively impact your health and sleeping habits. For a few examples, sleep apnea is a disorder where your breathing repeatedly starts and stops during the night. Parasomnia involves abnormal movements, speech, and other actions, such as sleepwalking where others may think you are awake. Narcolepsy is a disorder where you experience overwhelming drowsiness throughout the day, and sometimes are met with sudden sleep attacks where you pass out. Depersonalization. Depersonalization is a deeper form of disassociation, in which a person often feels they are seeing themselves from outside their body, or feel the world around them is not real. Obsessive love disorder. Obsessive love disorder is an informal term used to describe an unhealthy sexual or romantic fixation on another person, often characterized by all-consuming desire to protect, possess, or be involved with an individual. Ganser syndrome. Ganser syndrome is a rare and controversial diagnosis, nicknamed prison psychosis, where a person responds with nonsensical or wrong answers while experiencing a fugue or amnesia. Often seen in prison patients where it can be seen as an attempt to gain leniency from court officials. Insomnia. Insomnia is a common sleep disorder in which one may have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or getting quality sleep. This can happen regardless of time constraint or environmental factors. Conduct disorder. Conduct disorder is characterized by disregard for others, difficulty following rules, and behaving in a socially acceptable way. Those with this disorder can sometimes be hostile or physically violent. Static vision or visual snow. Visual snow is a rare condition that causes people to see small dots like snow or static in their vision, which may be caused by an abnormality in part of the brain. Non-epileptic seizures. Non-epileptic seizures are similar to epileptic seizures without the unusual electrical activity in the brain. It is most often caused by mental stress or a physical condition. Fainting is a type of non-epileptic seizure. Attachment disorder. An attachment disorder is a disorder that can develop in young children who have problems emotionally attaching to others. There are two types: reactive attachment disorder and disinhibited social engagement disorder. Reactive attachment disorder is when someone avoids or shies away from forming interpersonal relationships and is often accompanied by depressive symptoms or withdrawn behavior. Disinhibited social engagement disorder is the opposite, with those with the disorder suffering from a lack of social inhibition, making them very chatty and outgoing, often acting impulsively. Alexithymia. Alexithymia is a very broad term used to describe those with problems feeling emotion. While it is often a secondary diagnosis, those with this disorder may have trouble expressing and identifying their emotions, such as happiness on a joyous occasion. Narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by an unreasonably high sense of self-importance, where those with this disorder seek attention and want people to admire them. They may also lack the ability to understand or care for the feelings of others. One common underlying symptom is a lack of self-worth and feeling upset at any criticism. Psychogenic. Psychogenic movement disorder is any unwanted movements, such as spasms, shaking, or jerks involving any part of the face, neck, or limbs. Speech and voice disorders are common in those with this disorder. Acute stress disorder. Acute stress disorder is similar to PTSD, but for a shorter period of time. It forms in the first month after a traumatic event, but if it lasts longer than a month, it is considered PTSD. Avoidant food intake disorder. Avoidant food intake disorder is a new diagnosis that involves a person limiting their type or amount of food they consume. Although many children go through a phase of selective eating, those with avoidant food intake disorder may not be able to consume enough calories to grow properly to maintain basic body functions. Briquette syndrome. Briquette syndrome, or somatic symptom disorder, is a mental health condition that causes people to feel extreme anxiety about any physical symptoms they have, or feel they have. Those with this disorder have excessive thoughts, feelings, or behaviors about the perceived symptoms they have. Morgellons disease. Morgellons disease is the belief that parasites or fibers are emerging from the skin. People with this condition often feel as if something is crawling on or stinging their skin. Misophonia. Misophonia is a disorder that causes certain sounds to trigger emotional or physiological responses that might be perceived as unreasonable in the given circumstance. The sound can cause reactions from anger and annoyance to outright panic or the need to flee. Complex PTSD. Complex PTSD takes the symptoms of PTSD, such as flashbacks, heightened reactions, and general anxiety, and adds difficulty controlling emotions, feeling angry and distrustful towards the world, and feelings of worthlessness, shame, and guilt. Alien hand syndrome. Alien hand syndrome is a phenomenon in which someone's hand is not under the control of their mind. The person is completely unable to control their hand, and it instead acts as if it had a mind of its own. Dissociative identity disorder. Dissociative identity disorder, otherwise known as multiple personality disorder, involves the person switching between other identities. Those with this disorder may feel as if two or more people are talking or living inside their head, and they may feel as if they are being possessed by other entities. This condition usually arises as a reaction to a shocking or painful event as a way to push back painful memories. Hysterical fugue. Hysterical fugue, otherwise known as dissociative fugue, is a mental disorder that causes a person to lose their awareness, wander impulsively, become confused, and memory loss. This state can last for days, months, or longer. This disorder may also be accompanied by a change in identity, with a completely new identity or change in previous. Schizoaffective. Schizoaffective disorder is a mental illness that can affect your thoughts, mood, and behavior. Those with schizoaffective disorder have symptoms of mania, depression, and psychosis. Cycles of delusion, hallucinations, and mania follow depressed episodes. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a brain disorder that causes delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, trouble thinking, and a lack of motivation. Schizophrenic people may create a false belief of being harmed or harassed, or hearing or seeing things that do not exist as if they were real. Dissociative amnesia. Dissociative amnesia is when one cannot remember important information about themselves, as the memories may be distressing or upsetting events. This is most likely associated with long-term trauma such as abuse, neglect, or violence. Maladaptive daydreaming. Maladaptive daydreaming is a behavior where a person spends an excessive amount of time daydreaming and become immersed in their imagination. This is often a coping mechanism for people who have other mental health conditions such as anxiety. While not a condition in itself, it can have some overlap with other conditions. Borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a mental illness that severely impacts a person's ability to regulate their emotions and how they think and feel about themselves and others. Some symptoms include fear of abandonment, unstable relationships, unclear self-image, self-destructive behaviors, and chronic feelings of emptiness. Spiritual-themed psychosis. Spiritual-themed psychosis is a form of religious delusion in which a person may hear voices that they interpret to be from God or saints. They may also experience visual hallucinations that they believe to be visions that they were meant to see. Any neurodivergent disorder. Neurodivergent disorders are a range of disorders in which a person's brain processes information in a way that is not typical to most individuals. This definition covers essentially every disorder, and some common neurodivergent disorders include autism, Tourette's, Down syndrome, bipolar disorder, and OCD. Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, in which a person suffers a progressive disease beginning with memory loss and eventually leading to the inability to carry on a conversation or respond to their environment. Conversion disorder. Conversion disorder is a condition in which a mental health issue disrupts how your brain works, leading to seizures, weakness, paralysis, or reduced input from one or more senses. Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a disorder in which a person has uncontrollable and unintended movements, such as shaking, stiffness, or difficulty with walking, talking, balance, and coordination. Level 4. Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome describes a psychological condition in which a person identifies or empathizes with their captor or abuser and their goals. Sometimes it even becomes real love in the mind of the victim. This can also cause the victim to become hostile or have negative feelings towards vigilantes or police officers who would attempt to free them. Hypergraphia. Hypergraphia is an overwhelming urge to write. Some may keep a large journal, jot frequent letters, or compile a dictionary. Those with this disorder may turn to other writing materials if none are available, such as writing on toilet paper. Cotard's delusion. Those with Cotard's delusion believe that part of their body is missing and that they are either dying, dead, or don't exist. Another term for this disorder is walking corpse disorder. This delusion also encompasses delusions of immortality. Body integrity identity disorder. BIID is a rare phenomenon in which a healthy person has the desire to amputate or otherwise remove body parts, or desires paralysis. Sometimes those with this disorder attempt to mutilate themselves, while others ask for help from a surgeon. Reduplicative paramnesia. Reduplicative paramnesia is the belief that a place or location has been duplicated, with both locations existing simultaneously, or that the current room or building has been relocated to a different site, often a familiar one. As an example, one patient believed that she had been moved from her hospital to the same hospital in a familiar suburb, and explained that the medical staff worked in both locations to further explain the discrepancy. Another example is that often soldiers believe that they were located in a hospital within their hometown instead of their actual location. Wendigo psychosis. Wendigo, or Wendigo psychosis, is a form of psychosis in which one develops an intense craving for human flesh, and believes themselves to have been possessed by a Wendigo, a mythological evil spirit from the folklore of the Native American Plains Indians. Fergoli delusion. The Fergoli delusion is the belief that one or more people that you know are repeatedly changing their appearance around you. They often believe that the person in question is prosecuting them. Capgras delusion. Capgras delusion is the belief that someone you know has been replaced by an identical duplicate. Sometimes the replaced person is believed to have a different personality, and the imposter can also replace inanimate objects or even animals. Xenoglossy. Xenoglossy refers to cases where a person will speak a real language that they do not know in their ordinary state of consciousness. There are two forms of xenoglossy: recitative, where a person can speak incomprehensibly or nonsense, and responsive, where a person is able to use the language intelligibly. Micropsia. Micropsia is a condition in which objects are perceived to be smaller than their objective size. The opposite case is known as macropsia, in which a person will perceive objects as larger than their objective size. Biblocto. Biblocto is a condition developed among the Inuit in which a person is struck by disturbed outbursts, possession, hostility, and dissociative episodes. This condition is mainly seen during the winter by traditional Inuit women and is also known as Arctic hysteria. Green sickness. Green sickness, otherwise known as hyperchromic anemia, is a term used to describe those with pale red cells. This is due to a reduction in the hemoglobin of the cells, which can cause the skin tinge to be greenish. Symptoms include a lack of energy, shortness of breath, headaches, and small appetite. Phantom tics. A tic is a fast, repetitive muscle movement that results in sudden and difficult to control jolts or sounds. A phantom tic is a sensation associated with tics, where they are felt in other people or within objects as an out-of-body sensation. These are often relieved by touching or scratching the object in question. Level 5. Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome is a mental condition in which a person repeatedly seeks medical attention for falsified, exaggerated, or self-inflicted physical conditions. Named after a German aristocrat famous for telling wild, unbelievable tales about his past and exploits. Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is the same as the previous definition, done to someone under their care. Caretaker of children, often mothers, make up false symptoms or cause real symptoms to make it look as if their child is sick. This has become rather popular in media, with several TV shows about this illness, such as Sharp Objects and Take Care of Maya. Folie à deux. Folie à deux, otherwise known as shared psychosis, happens when multiple people are sharing a delusional belief or hallucination. While no longer in the DSM-5, there have been cases of shared delusions. One such recent case was of Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier, who attempted to kill their classmate as a sacrifice to Slenderman. Klein-Levin syndrome. Klein-Levin syndrome is a rare disorder that primarily affects teenage males, where symptoms arise during episodes that include overeating, irritability, hallucinations, disorientation, and abnormally high sex drive. Depression may come with these symptoms, but not always. A person may not also remember what has happened during the episode. Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Alice in Wonderland syndrome is heavily related to micropsia and macropsia, in which a person sees the world around them in a distorted manner, with objects being either larger or smaller than objectively sized. Kuro syndrome. Kuro syndrome is characterized by anxiety attacks due to the belief that one's sex organs are retracting and disappearing into their body, and that this retraction is a fatal occurrence, despite actual physical changes taking place. Fatal familial insomnia. Fatal familial insomnia is a rare genetic degenerative brain disorder characterized by an inability to sleep that starts out mildly, but progressively worsens until significant physical and mental deterioration from the lack of sleep, ultimately resulting in death. Mental illness in animals. The study of mental and behavioral disorders in animals is known as animal psychopathology. Historically, we have a tendency to anthropomorphize animal behaviors, but some work has been done into wild and domesticated animals. Wild animals appear to be relatively free from eating disorders, but domesticated animals are prone to such disorders. Some common disorders for animals are activity anorexia, pica, and OCD. Activity anorexia is a condition in which rats will begin to exercise excessively while cutting down their food intake, similar to human anorexia. This can happen due to restricted food access but unrestricted wheel access, causing them to become consumed into exercise behaviors. Pica is another rather common disorder, in which several types of animals will ingest clay or other minerals. Chickens have been noticed to display a type of pica when feed deprived, and rats also take part in pica as an analogous response to vomiting, as rats are unable to vomit. Cats are also known to display pica behaviors, chewing or suckling on objects such as wool, cotton, or even cardboard, which leads to ingestion. OCD in animals is often called stereotypy, and is defined as specific, unnecessary action repeated more than expected. One type of such behavior is grooming in rats. Grooming behavior in rats is often a specific sequence of actions that does not normally differ between individual rats. And that is the end of the list. Sorry for the lack of segue, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed the content shown within. Yet again, special thanks to Emmeline for letting me use their chart. I am unsure of the next video topic, but I may do a short dive into social experiments, keeping in the theme of this video. Regardless, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider liking or subscribing, as it really helps me to keep making videos. Anyway, with all that being said, I will see you all later. Until next time, have a good one.